All right. Welcome to The Standard. This is no
Mhm.
longer the BG Perform podcast. This is The Standard. And we're introducing you to the new podcast. We're introducing you to some reasons why we made this change, some of the decisions we thought about going into this. And we are going to dive into all of that today. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this for a while because it's something that I've kind of had on my mind, but obviously, when you get used to having the name as something and it's hard to make that switch. But I want to give a shout out to Danielle, my girlfriend, because she initially told me about this a couple weeks ago. She kind of acts as my brand manager and helps me with a lot of the aesthetic pieces of what I do. And she was like, I feel like with everything you're changing, there is you need to change the name of the podcast. It doesn't really like fit with what you're doing. It doesn't speak to what you're doing. And obviously I talked about it with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes. And we agreed and we thought it was a good idea because I've been making a little bit of a shift. Jerry's been obviously making a little bit of a shift as well as we try to create obviously what speaks the most to us as coaches and what we're trying to
Mhm.
achieve. And I think the standard is something that we've both kind of latched onto. One, that's it's obviously the the motto, I guess, of BG Perform or the mission
Mhm.
statement of BG Perform. And also it's just what we're trying to do is set a standard inside the industry. So yeah, I'm excited to introduce this. I'm excited for this to be the new name of the podcast and a new direction for the podcast. Uh, Talked a lot with Jerry about like where this is going to go and kind of where we want to take some of this. Um, but anything to add to that?
I think it's gonna be fun to see it kind of transform. I said it in the last episode where obviously we're the same people. We have the same like mission to build a better standard in the industry, and I think the name fits really well with that. So it's gonna be cool to see this kind of form its own unique identity, not only for what we're working on together, but also in the podcast industry. And just, I feel like a lot of podcasts talk about there's podcasts for everything, but as far as creating a higher standard for coaching, this is the one that I would think of as the only one. So,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
and I also wanted to change the name because I feel like it fits better to have something that's because me and Jerry are both doing this, and this is Jerry's podcast as well. And I think obviously he doesn't care about the name, but to me it feels better knowing it's like both of ours as the standard instead of
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
BG Perform podcast. Unless he's been harboring all this hate for me for the last couple of years of doing this.
There's a voodoo doll in my room. I just pulled all the pins out as soon as you told me. So
Damn.
it worked.
All right, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, so yeah, so before we dive into this, what's been going on?
My lighting is weird. Besides that, just been working a ton, eating everything. I up my calories again. We're trying to really pack on some pounds. Um, Program is changing this week, just some minor changes. So I'm excited to go to the gym today to start that up.
Okay.
We're getting some barbell bench back in there. I've been on
I started
dumbbells for a
benching this
little bit.
barbell benching too this week.
Really?
Or
Oh
last
my
week I
god,
started
how
barbell
fun
benching.
is it,
I miss it.
dude? It's great. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm gonna bring the camera. Um, get a nice little recorded session and everything. So it's gonna be good. Work has been crazy busy, but also like chaotic with
Mhm.
scheduling and stuff. So I'm just making the most of the summertime. I mentioned that last podcast too. Like the energy is just electric during the summer, and I love it. So
Yeah.
things have been good, man. Things have been good. How about
All
you?
right. Busy, good. Like I said, making some changes inside of what I'm doing, trying to shift the focus of what I do because I think it's funny. I was sitting down and kind of looking at the people I work with, some
Hmm.
of the clients I work with, and the direction I was trying to go with a lot of it. And I think that like what I want to talk about today is a big shift behind what I've been trying to change, and I think it speaks and it feels smoother. I think I've been trying to focus on creating better content, putting out better information. And I think when you talk about the thing that like matters to you the most,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to have those conversations. So um, I'm excited about it. And then I've started barbell benching too.
Nice.
Been
Nice.
awesome. I also kind of got a little bit back into some CrossFit training this week and last week, which I was
You know what?
excited about.
I've
What?
been throwing some metcons in for some
Have you?
conditioning, bro. Yeah,
All right.
I
All
I
right.
saw all these high rocks guys, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go
Uh,
back to like doing what works
no,
better than high
CrossFit.
rocks.
CrossFit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I went to my friend Brennan Jeffers. I went to his CrossFit gym. Well, not his, but like he's the head coach over there.
Hmm.
CrossFit Chatter. I went over there on Saturday, did a partner workout, and then I went this morning, worked out with him again. Nick joined me. Um, hard. I forget. You forget how hard those workouts are. I did really
Yeah,
well. I'd done really well. Today was a little bit more difficult because it was a lot of handstand stuff, um, which I've struggled with in the past. But it feels good to get back into that stuff. And like I was talking to him on Saturday when I went in there. And again, this is part of why this shift is kind of occurring inside of what we're doing and what I'm doing personally. But I feel like over the last couple of years, as I kind of really like had a narrow focus on what was going on, and like I was coaching one person. Obviously I had people online still, but like in person I had one person I was worried about looking at, coaching, talking to, that sort of thing. And it takes away from the overall coaching experience, right? And I think a lot of people would look at that and say, oh, I would have a dream of like just coaching one person. And in theory, yes, like it's great, but you miss out on a lot of pieces of coaching when you're just coaching one person, right? You don't see different movement, you don't use certain cues because you don't have to, or you kind of get desensitized to certain things because there's not a lot of change in some of it. And um, I think for me, one of the things that I realized over the last couple of weeks was like my fitness is kind of uh, definitely not stalled because I changed some things up, but like it's something I always think about and liked was like training in that mixed modal setting.
hmm
And I just feel like I'm a better coach. I feel like I'm a better individual. I feel like I'm a fitter individual when I'm in that setting. So I needed to find a way to get back into that setting in some capacity with my own training. So um, and I think part of the thing that I've been kind of diving into is like when you're not exploring other options and you kind of get stuck inside of what you're doing. It's not to say that like training a certain way is bad, but
yeah, yeah,
as you grow and you start to create new opportunities or lack thereof, right? You don't have those same opportunities and you want to create new ones. Sometimes going back to like what did work and kind of like revisiting that stuff is always good. And the thing about CrossFit is like it's better than High Rocks, and it's
First off,
it's very what's the word? I don't know the word I'm looking for, but like there's a lot of skills, right? And like it's a lot of really good skills to learn. You know,
yeah, broad range of movements, a
yeah,
lot of different ways to move your body, different
yep.
planes of
And there's a
movement.
lot of
Yeah,
good skills that like these past couple workouts I realized like obviously I still have access to, but I haven't done them in a long time. Like
you had to almost like
Saturday,
tap back into it a little bit.
Saturday I did burpees for the first time, and I don't even know how long. I did clean and jerks for the first time, and I don't even know how long. I did today. I did wall walks and handstand push-ups, um, toes to bar, like that sort of stuff. I've sprinkled them in, but like it's good to do those sorts of things again. And you
Hmm.
and you, there's definitely a necessity for depth in programming that you don't get in like normal training that you get from these types of training sessions. So, um, definitely looking forward to it. Bringing it back in, and also obviously like helping me get to that standard, or bring that standard of coaching in, and set it. And I think part of what goes on with coaches sometimes is we get kind of bogged down in like the day to day stuff and our schedule and the times that we train and whatnot, and we end up kind of checking things off the checklist and not really being focused on it. And I think part of why I'm making this change to the podcast is because I want this to be something that's like high quality, right? I
Yeah,
want this to be
yeah.
something that every time you listen to it, you take something away, whether it's a thought, a conversation, a disagreement, an agreement, whatever it might be. And there's some sort of like afterthought that goes along with it. And I think instead of just speaking, I think I want this to be something that coaches can come back to and have a beacon of light or like a home base to kind of start to set these standards inside of coaching. And I
Mhm.
think part of setting those standards is obviously like keeping them yourself. And I think a lot of coaches don't. And I think that was one of the things that for me over the last couple of weeks I've been realizing is like a lot of these people that are coaches are not either training themselves or they're not training to the highest capacity that they could, and
Hmm.
it's affecting their overall coaching, you know. Um, but I think that's part of the reason I wanted to change it, and that's part of the reason I wanted to create the standard as a podcast is because I want standards to be a part of what we do as coaches, and I think someone needs to start to actually have that direct conversation.
I think that another important point is when you're saying like coaches aren't training themselves or like holding themselves to that standard. I think if you want to coach a certain type of person and you're coaching them through movements, you should be very, very efficient and what's the word? Proficient. What's the word I'm looking for? You should be very good at those movements.
Yeah,
Like it should
proficient,
be
proficient, yeah.
proficient. Yeah, yeah. So you should be very proficient in those movements. And
Well, I
that's
don't
kind
think.
of like
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like even right now, like I'm training athletes again, and it had been a minute since I had gone through really high level programming for an athlete who's trying to become more explosive, faster, all this stuff. Because I went more toward the general route for a little bit, and in that sense, it had me thinking like these are skills that I want to make sure I can still do. So I started training a little bit differently, even though my goal is to continue to put on a little more mass overall. That's my main goal. I still want to move well, which
Yeah.
is why I started doing more metcons too. Like I want a better aerobic capacity. I want to be able to again train at a higher level. So I have to hold myself to that higher standard. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of it also is I think to be a great coach, you need to have a lot of exposure to things. I think the one thing I really loved about CrossFit back in the day when I was doing it was the exposure to things, right? Like, and I think now we're probably at a point where I know, especially I can speak for myself in saying that, like, I've had so much experience in both ends that it's like a really nice way to find the middle now, the middle ground of like solid strength training with mixed modal work. And I think that that's part of to me the standard is being able because I think there's a lot of people and we're going to talk about this, but I think a lot of coaches pigeonhole themselves and not to say that you shouldn't, you know, niche down in something, but I think you pigeonhole yourself and without exploring the other ends of this, it's really hard to know truly like what great fitness is, you know?
mhm, yeah,
But yeah, so I think that's why I wanted to change things and why I wanted to create it. And also because like I speak on standards a lot, right? And I think what I was speaking on and how the voice was coming out, just it wasn't matching what was going on. Like I have the coach connect. My motto is to influence the highest standard of coaching. The way that I speak is about influencing the highest standard of coaching. I think that message was something I was realizing just wasn't connecting the dots, right? And I think
yeah, yeah,
the podcast with what I'm going to talk about with my training program, the standard, and then the coach connect and this ecosystem starting to evolve of building that standard of coaching and actually defining what that means. And kind of what I want to start to do each week is have like a standard that Jerry and I dive into and talk about why it's so important to uphold that standard and really how we can actually implement that inside of our training and our coaching business as well. So, um, anything you want to add to that?
I think that last thing you said perfectly brings us to what we have to talk about today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just briefly touch on, what the standard is and like how it relates to the training because I think with what I'm trying to do with the standard training program is I want coaches to experience great training, right? And I think a lot of times with setting a standard, you have to experience the standard first, right? And I think many of us coaches have had that experience where we are doing a certain type of training and then we have something else and then we're like, oh, well, this feels good or this is what it's supposed to be like. And I think the experience of a coach working with and or around other coaches sets new standards, right? And it's not always the case. I think also working around other people helps us realize what we don't want to be as a coach, right? But I think more often than not, when we're around certain people, it sets a new bar for us and creates a new standard. And my hope is that every person that comes in contact with myself, my training programs, or this podcast becomes a better coach because of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think how this relates is like I want this to kind of be the a point where people can come back to as coaches to listen to and hopefully they're willing to take that dive and experience what it's like to work with myself or Jerry in a coaching setting, whether it be in person or online, and experience what like a real online experience looks like, or a real individualized experience looks like, and have that be their new standard for their clients, right? Because I think as a coach, I've experienced a lot of things. I've gone a lot of places. I've met a lot of people, had a lot of conversations, and I think a lot of these coaches struggle with the same thing. It's like everybody wants to coach, but I think with what we're going to talk about today, they don't have certain things that they hold themselves to, or certain standards that they have in their practice, and then they miss out on a lot of the benefits that come with having those standards, or they miss out because they don't hold themselves to the standard they ask their clients. And I think clients can see that and sense that right
Hmm.
away when you're not holding yourself to that standard. So anything on top?
No, I think it's funny because you said like you don't know the standard, a higher standard until you experience it. And I just like funny analogy, like as soon as somebody recommended I watch an anime, I was like, I'm not watching anime, bro. And then I watched Death Note and Attack on Titan. I'm like, oh, this is what it could be. It's not just like weird high pitched voices and like
Yeah.
awkward breathing.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like you think about uh, any coach who hasn't been able to experience being around a higher level of coaches. I've said this before too. Like, I'd rather be the dumbest smart person in the room rather than the smartest dumb person. If you are surrounded by people with a higher standard, you have access to things that you didn't before. So allowing yourself to be the quote unquote dumbest smart person in the room, it takes a little bit of setting your ego and your pride aside and saying like there are things I need to learn. There are things that I can take from other people and become a better coach. Because I think to be a coach, you kind of have to have an ego a little bit because you have to believe in the process. And I think that the start of finding the higher standard for you truly begins with setting that ego and pride aside.
Yeah. And I think it's just having standards, and I
Yeah,
think that's
just
why like
watch
it's
that better
so,
anime.
yeah, just watch Attack on Titan and Death Note, and
Exactly.
then you'll
Exactly.
understand what the peak standard of anime should be,
Exactly.
because those shows are amazing.
Hmm.
But I just think, and I think that's a good example. It's a funny example, but like in all seriousness, like when you've seen something and you're like, I need this in my life, like more of this,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's a new way that you want to do things, or a new way you want to experience things. And I think like for me, I've had so many of those experiences in my life, and I've had such a back and forth recently about like the things that I know I want to implement, and then having to, or how I continue to implement them, because my the last year has been a little bit of, again, of like a change in how I was doing things, because I was in such a, almost like, not realistic setting for
Hmm.
like career wise. Like it was fun, but it like wasn't like, it's not normal, right? And
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
never be. I mean, maybe again I'll replicate that experience in some way, shape, or form, but like I don't know. I don't know if I want to. I don't know like if that would even be possible. Like whatever it is, but I think now it's like I know there's pieces of that puzzle that I enjoy, and I think to do that there needs to be standards set, and I need to have things in place so people have a really good experience. And I think it's funny because when I was in Coach Connect the other day, we were talking about like we're on module 4, like a system for coaching clients, and I was talking about like if I had the system 10 years ago, then I would never have lost a client. You know what I mean? Like I would have had the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
thing. And like I think about all the clients that like didn't get the best version of me, or and it's not because I didn't want to give it, it's just because I did what I thought was best at that time, and I think now of like where I'm at now, and hopefully in 5 years, this version of me looks back and goes, wow, I didn't know anything then, and I think
Yeah.
that the standard also is like understanding as we progress, we're going to get better, right? But we're just doing what we can, the best that we can right now, with the best intention moving forward. So, um, I think why it's important to have standards is, like I said, because without them, then this all kind of becomes like not really like a game, but like there's no, again, there's no barrier of entry. And I think that's what's going on right now in the fitness industry, is like anybody can be a coach as long as they're halfway good at sales, and they look decent. And that's the problem. And I think the biggest thing, which is a problem, is that they're just halfway decent at sales. And that's just not what coaching is, right? Like coaching is an opportunity to make someone like a better person at the end of
Hmm.
the day, through your experience and through your lens of what that looks like. And I think it's important to have standards because that's what guides us, right? That's what guides us as coaches. That's what creates the experience. That's what creates the delivery. That's what creates the progressions, all that stuff. And without it, your people are not getting the best version of that. And I've met people, a lot of people in my time, who I thought were like the standard of coaching, and then I end up meeting them, and they're just not for one reason or another. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that's been an eye-opening experience of like, hey, what are my faults? Like, what are something that like I need to improve on? So when I have that experience with somebody, it is the best experience in the world, right? And I'm evolving, I'm growing, I'm learning, and again, that's the whole point of this, and that's what I want this podcast to be, is just a new way to digest the standards and understand what and where and why and how to implement them inside your business and coaching. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny because you say like looking back at a past version of yourself, you're just like, wow, I can't believe that that's the standard that I thought was like the standard. And it's I've also like talked to different coaches, and by the time you meet them or talk to them, it's like this little veil is lifted and you see like who they really are, and it's sometimes it can be disappointing. And I think as a coach, we should strive to be the coach that when people see, they're like, wow, that's the standard. Then when they talk to us, they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much more they actually do.
yeah,
I'm just seeing the surface level. So when the veil is lifted, I think that we should aim to have people become more infatuated with the process and the standard that we hold ourselves with, rather than the veil being lifted and be like, oh, I
yeah.
just met my hero,
Well,
you
that's what
know?
I'm saying. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it's not always and I think part of like what we're going to talk about today is the reason.
Yeah.
But I just think when you when you look at coaching, it's more often than not, it's a bit, and maybe I'm just speaking from a very like, unfortunately, I've had some like bad experiences, uh, but it tends to be somewhat of a letdown sometimes.
I wouldn't even say unfortunately. It's good that you had those because now you have a better picture
Yeah,
of
yeah,
how we can
definitely.
change the industry, you know?
Yeah. And what I want to talk about today is like the standard I want to talk about today. How I want to kick off the standard is I kind of want to have an idea each show that we dive into, and give a little bit of some depth or some thought to. But like coaching is a career, and that is the standard, right? And what I mean by that is like as a coach, we have to commit to this being a career. And I think a lot of the problems that arise inside of coaching, inside of um, you know, inside of training, whatever you want to call it, arise because people are looking for like a shortcut, and they're not looking to be in this long term, right? They're not looking to maintain a coaching career. I still think it's funny. I was talking to a coach this week, and they were talking about how the situation they're kind of in, they're not sure if this is what they want to do because they want to start to have a family and they want to start to um, branch out, and they've been coaching for a few years now. They've been doing in-person coaching, and it was just a conversation where it made me feel like as a coach like kind of upset, not like in a like it's just upset that like again like coaching is still seen as like not a career, because like
Yeah.
I want this to be my career, and I don't really have another thing that I want to do, and I don't even want to think about doing anything else. And it's like when people still have that thought of like, hey, I don't know if I can make this like a real career that's going to fund me, right? It was just kind of
Mhm.
like he was talking about, um, maybe looking at some other thing, and I think you know, and this is why the Coach Connect is so great, because we have opportunities inside the Coach Connect to like have these conversations with people
Mhm.
like, my friend Mike, who I run the Coach Connect with, who runs a really successful gym in Clifton Park here, or Reba, who's a part of the group. She runs Saratoga Battlegrounds. It's called Battlegrounds Fitness in Saratoga, and like myself, and then the other coaches. So like, there's such a good opportunity, right? And it's where you can kind of like dive in and feel those things where, you know I think coaches need to first make that commitment. Like the standard should be, this is a career, right? Like
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
my career, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? And one like that should be like the bottom line standard. And if you're not looking to do that, obviously you can do it part time. It's not to say you can't, but like I just think you have to make that commitment early on. Otherwise, like, again, I can't, and it's so hard because I can't just go be like a part-time lawyer. And I'll keep going
Yeah.
back to this. Like, you can't just be, I'll part-time lawyer on the side, or I'll be a part-time doctor on the side. It's like, no, you literally have to commit everything, like money, time, freedom, family, friends, all of that to become those things. And then you're that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
in training, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to, maybe I'll train part time, or maybe I'll do this on the side, but like I need to get some like real security in my life. And it's like, well, why is that a thing? Right? Like, and I think it's because, again, it's a lot of people who are just like, oh, this is a good way to make easy money, right? And I can do it for a few years until I figure out what's real, and then, or a real job, or what's, secure, and then I'll do that. And it's frustrating because, like, I don't look at it like that. I know a lot of people that I'm around or I talk to don't look at it like that. And I think there needs to be this sort of conversation around it where very first thing when you do this is like, I want this as a career, right? And if you don't, then like, I, I wouldn't say don't coach, but like make room for people who actually want it to be a career, and like let those, and not let those people, because obviously you have to compete at the end of the day, but like don't take that away from people who actually want that as a career opportunity, because I think it comes to the point, and again, you can't stop somebody from doing it, right? The only
Yeah.
thing we can do is speak about it and let those people who do love coaching shine through and become that, like, that standard, right? And I think that's why it's so important, is because I think there's a lot of mixed standards, right? And I think, like, one of the hardest things inside of coaching, and why I believe there's like such a hard understanding of what standards are, is because there is no guiding governing body. There is, like, the NSCA tries to be that, but everybody and their mother has a certification. Everybody, or I should say everybody and their trainer has a certification, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody has a certification, everybody has a course, everybody has an educational group. And like, yes, I'm part of that as well, but like, there needs to be some universal standard of what coaching is. And I think the way I want to go about it is just breaking it down. Like, if you don't want this as a career, then like you shouldn't be in it. Like, simple as that, right? If you don't want this to be what pays your bills and supports your family and gets you moving forward, then like you should not be a coach. Because again, you're gonna cut corners. You're not gonna give the best service, right? You're not gonna look at this as life or death. You're gonna look at this as, well, I'll just go do the real thing. I'll just go do my regular job, or, this is fun, but like I'm not gonna go too deep. I'm not gonna like worry about this too much, and then you affect the rest of the industry, right?
Hmm.
And I think, as someone like myself, as I've realized over the course of time, is it's a very low bar you need to have to be a good trainer, right? And like, you don't have to be, on top of things most of the time. You can make mistakes. You can, fuck up here and there and still be okay. And like, obviously that happens in jobs, but I think with coaching, I think one of the things I noticed was when I was, and I'm currently dealing with this, like, when you're in an environment that the bar is so low, it's so hard to actually look at yourself. Like, you have to actively look at yourself and go back and say, where can I be better? Right? Because you're not being forced to be better, right? You're
Hmm.
not being forced to look in the mirror. You're not being forced to have that conversation of like, wow, like if I want to be successful here, I have to like get better. And what are the people around me doing, And like, in certain situations, when you go into them, it's like, when you're, like you said, when you're the smartest person in a room full of dumb people, you don't have to do much, because it's like, oh, well, I can show up and I can just do the bare minimum, and that's what happens.
Oh my god.
Wow, it's gone.
Oh my god, you see he pull his thumb off?
And I think that's a really important thing to think about, and that's why, like, I commit to this being my career. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have anything, like I said, and I don't want to have anything else that like is my career. And I think in that setting, there's so many people I talk to that are like, yeah, I do training, but like my real thing is this, or like, I do training, but like I really enjoy this instead. And it's tough because, again, like, um, long term, it's like the client is suffering the most, right? Because, is that person fully invested? Are they getting the best service that they can? Are they just filling the hour with whatever? And for most of what I see, it's just filling the hour with whatever, right? Um, and I think there needs to be this conversation about committing to it being a career. And that's where we need to start. And that should be the number one thing is like, before I do this, before I go get my first certification, before I train my first person, before I do any of that, like I need to commit that I want this to be my career, because that's what's going to start to set the standard and set the bar. Because if it's your career, right? Like, again, if you're a lawyer and you're a doctor, I shouldn't speak this. Maybe I don't know, but like, they're not going to cut corners to get what they need to get done, right? Obviously, stuff happens, but like, I think there's a certain standard you set inside of your practice, and you don't really worry about anything else going on outside of that. And you just work each and every day, and you make sure that, like, you know, every single day you're giving a better experience, a better delivery, a better program, better results, all of that, because that's what's going to start to, again, shine through. And I think there are a lot of people out there who treat this as a career, and I think those people need to be um, you know, highlighted, right? But I also think it's like, because I think in social media now, I think there's a lot of people who are career fitness people, but they are because of social media. They're not because they actually love training, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that, people look up to, and because they have a lot of followers, they're able to continue to train, right? But if you took that away, they wouldn't build a coaching career, if that makes sense. Like, I have the luxury of having, I could probably name like 4 or 5 people right now that have successful coaching businesses that aren't huge on social media and are like legitimately like doing very well for themselves, right? And those are the people I look up to. And those are the people who I think are like great minds, great coaches, great individuals, teachers, educators, that sort of thing. But all of them have said the same thing. And it's just like they're all in, you know?
Yeah.
Like that this is their life, this is their career. And like I said, I think I think it's very confusing for coaches, and I think it's very confusing for people, because success is kind of seen as like Instagram followers and money, right?
Mhm.
And those people oftentimes aren't the best coaches. They're just really good actors and really good at like selling themselves, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at like the best coaches, my co-host for Behind the Design, Daniel, Sam Smith, Jason Layden, Mike, my co-host for
Coach
the Coach
Connect.
Connect, right? Like, those guys are actually coaches. Carl Hardwick, who's the
Mhm.
lead, like I think he's the CFO of OPEX. Um, James Fitzgerald, like, these guys aren't huge on social media, right? That's not their MO, and they're great coaches who have built successful businesses, right? And I think that's what's important. That's what the standard is, right? It's
Yeah.
that type of thing where it's like they have family as a priority. They take care of their clients. They're training consistently. They're learning. They're educating. All of that, and that's what coaching should look like. That is the standard of coaching that I speak of. Not today we're gonna do. We're gonna lift 2 girls on a barbell and we're gonna do squats, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. It's attention, whatever. But like, is that actually what the standard of coaching should be? No, not at all, right? And I think that's where this conversation heads, and that's where my mind goes to, is like, if you commit early on that coaching is your career, yes, whatever. Maybe that's how it goes, and like, you do a couple reels and you get some attention, whatever. But like, you need to treat this as a career, right? And there's a lot of things I want to dive into over the next couple of weeks about what does treating this as a career mean. I just wanted to kind of talk today about that first standard of like, this is my career, and that's like the number one standard before anything else falls into place. Because if you commit to that standard of saying like, this is my career, this is what I'm doing, then you can start to branch out into everything else. Because I think when you make that commitment of like, I'm going to do this until there's something else, then you're never going to be able to fully dive into it. You're never going to be
Yeah.
able to take that step and actually like immerse yourself inside of coaching. And you have to do whatever you need to do that, right? If that's what you want to do. Sometimes, and I think, I don't want to get this confused as to like, you shouldn't do anything else, but like, if you're coaching with the goal of getting a quote unquote real job, then you're not committed, right? But if you're coaching and have something supporting this so you can continue to grow your coaching, that's totally cool, because you have to start somewhere early on, right? Nothing just like works. And that's where the beautiful part is. And social media is also a great tool for it. But I think you and I can both speak to this and say there's a difference between like a high standard coach and just like an influencer, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
both might make a lot
Absolutely.
of money, but like one is obviously not a coach, one is a entertainer, and one is actually a coach.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that you touched on that I kind of want to bounce ideas, not ideas, but my point off of too
Yeah.
is starting
Sorry,
off
I
with
kinda
people who
rambled
are,
on.
no, you're good. You're good. You add a lot of really good information. So like you started off with people who don't take the career seriously and they're like, oh, I'm doing this until I get to this. I've met, I could think of 2 or 3 coaches who aren't coaches anymore, and they were fantastic coaches, really good with people, really good with understanding the programming and the science behind it. And they just left the industry because they felt like they couldn't push forward, they couldn't make a career out of it. And it's sad because they're doing things that like I know they're not as passionate about, whether it's whatever insurance or real estate or something like that. It's always something that's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But then you talk to them about what they're passionate about, and it's fitness, and they're getting further and further away from it, not only in their professional life but their personal life. And where things get foggy, where people don't treat it like a career, I think it's of because of the influencer thing. And I know that like you talk to most people now, and if you say like, oh, what do you do for a living, and they say, oh, I'm a content creator, people are like, oh, so what's your job? And
Yeah.
then they're like, no, that is my job. And it's weird to think of that that's a job now, but it's just a different time.
Mm-hmm.
So like the weird thing is that's not looked at like a job, but now, or it wasn't in recent years, and now it more is becoming more accepted. So if somebody says, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm a YouTuber. Oh, I make content for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. People are like, oh, nice. This guy probably makes a lot of money. And what bothers me is because you can be an influencer in any little field, fitness is one that's just popular for a lot of people. Fitness is blown up.
Well, again, it's
It's
easy, right? Anything can
yeah,
be a workout for the most part, and then you get people who look a certain way or are on, uh, substances, we'll call them,
yeah.
and it's just not the truth. But keep going.
Yeah, and that's all it takes really is you have this person who looks the part. They have a lot of followers, and you're like, they must know what they're doing, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't always the case. And I actually saw a post a few weeks ago, maybe last week, where, excuse me, somebody was posting like, oh, they're in they're prepped for their bodybuilding show, and they were like, I actually found out that the program that was supposed to be individualized to me is the same program that's being given to all 300 of his clients. And he was telling me like this is specific to me, this is specific to me, but it was a big copy paste and it's a scam. And it's people like that who aren't actual coaches and don't have the best interest of people like everyday people or athletes or even people who want to compete, whatever it is. They don't have their best interest in mind. They have their own best interest in mind.
Yeah.
So when you have people like that, it creates distrust as well. So when people say, well, you're in fitness, you must be like that influencer that I saw who made all these copy pastes, and they don't take it seriously. So we need to, as coaches, truly set the standard not only for ourselves, but hold other people accountable so we can actually change the way that people view the fitness industry, whether it's for this copy paste thing or whether it's for, oh, this person has a lot of followers. It's like, yeah, followers are great and they can lead to good opportunities, but it doesn't mean that you have the best coach in front of you. Because just like you said, James Fitzgerald, what's Carl's last name?
Hardwick, yeah.
Carl Hardwick, people like them who don't have the biggest following, you could talk to them or watch their content, and you're like, holy shit, this guy's a genius.
Yeah.
And it's
I mean,
sad
Sam
that the
Smith is
waters
best
are becoming
example.
murky.
Like I said, Sam Smith. I love watching that guy talk. I love
Yeah,
his stuff. I've learned a lot from him. I did a mentorship with him not too long ago, and like, he's not a great social media guy, but it's just like always good information. The dude has a full roster. He's something I, hope to get to, business wise, and like, it's that's the standard to me. Like that's a real coach who's helping real people and has an actual standard inside of the business and like made coaching his career.
exactly. And then the way he did it was just by doing the best he can to be a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not just going to be like, oh, I got to get more followers. Let me just do what's fancy or do what's eye catching or whatever. Because the amount of coaches that I've talked to in recent, even months, years, who are just like, yeah, I don't have a plan. We've talked about that too. Like they come in, I see how they're doing, and then I change it. And it's like, okay, you can still do that. But if your client doesn't come into the gym and have even a slight idea of what they're doing that day, I feel like you're failing as an educator. And as a coach, you should be an educator. When my client comes in, they're like, okay, we got this today. And it's like, yes, sir. Yes, we do. We're building upon it. And then maybe there's new stuff through the weeks where it's like, all right, we're going to be starting something new.
Yeah.
They come in, they're not like, oh, we're doing that again. They're like, oh, what's new today? So they know there's a formula to success, and they know that it deals with progression. It's not random. It's not whatever's fancy. It's not whatever everyone else is doing in the gym just to look like you're doing the same thing. It's what builds results, and it's what is based on progression.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. And you know, I think coaching will improve as a career when our version of coaching starts to speak up about it and like actually holds people accountable. And I think they're starting to be, again, I think fitness is still very new, right? I don't and not new and obviously like taking care of yourself, but like I think the forms of fitness we're talking about are very new. They're very nuanced and they're very easy manipulative because you have, again, you have to trust what you're looking at as the truth, and you can't sometimes. And I think in those settings it's hard, and I think people get greedy and they want to make a lot of money and they know they can make a lot of money, so they do that sort of thing, right? But I think when you find a real coach and you hear the way they talk, you hear the way they speak, the way they kind of present themselves, like again, when I look at some of these guys Instagrams, when I look at my Instagram, right, I don't look at my Instagram and see flashiness. I don't look at, and see um clickbait, all that stuff. Like I try to make it something where people come, they know what they're getting, they know what they're like, how they're getting it, and it's real information that they can take, apply, and move on with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the types of things where, again, we have to speak up and say like, hey, I want coaching as a career, this is what it looks like, right? And you have to speak up and say, I want coaching as a career and this is what it looks like. And the other people around us, and like I said, I have people that I can like look up to, or we have people that we can look up to and say like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, like these types of people are people that are the standard of coaching. That's really what it looks like. Like I need to mimic this, and that's what you aim for, right?
Yep.
And I just think the more we have this conversation, the more people are going to understand it and be able to look back and say, hey, am I treating this as a career? And you have to be honest with yourself, right? Like you can't tell me you're treating this as a career and then you're like, oh, I need some more security, I need blah blah blah, this and that. Like it's not a bad thing. I'm not demonizing it. It's just like you can't like say that and then tell me that like this is a career for you, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if this is a career, you're going to do whatever it takes to make it a career, and you're going to go all in on it, right?
Yeah.
um so I hope that makes sense, because I think that's all I want. That's kind of where I want to cut it today, because I think
Yeah.
that was a really good talk about this. And then next episode, I want to talk or dive into a little bit more about what that looks like. And what I want to say about this is we were doing like a season format for obviously the last BG Perform. I don't want to get caught up in having this have to be a weekly thing. And what I mean by that is I want this to be very high quality information, well thought out. And I think part of that standard that I want to hold myself to is that every time you see my face, it's something that you can take away, right? Every time you see Jerry's face, it's something you can take away. And I want this to be a little bit more curated. So this conversation, it might be next week. I'm going to talk to Jerry after this, but like, we're going to kind of dive into that information where we see fit and make sure we have everything we need. So when we're coming in, we're giving you a little bit more of a framework, because I want to talk a little bit more about, next, about how you actually make this a career, right? Once you make that commitment and that you create that standard of like, this is my career, what is that next step? What does that look like? What are those next pieces? What do I have to do? I want to dive into that a little bit more. But anything you want to add on top of that?
No, I'm just excited to like. I think we've talked about this a lot too, like the quality over quantity and quantity over quality, and what would be best way. And I always think quality over quantity is better. I think that you should be able to provide good information every time you show up, and it shouldn't just be showing up to show up. I think that most people, based on the good old algorithm, that buzzword, right, trying to just constantly reach people all the time,
Yeah.
it's diluting information, but it's having people click and click off before they even get to the nitty gritty and to the meat and potatoes. So I think having the standard be our podcast name, because we're trying to reach a new standard and set the standard. I think that holding ourselves to a higher standard of information is the best way to do it. and
Yeah.
not just throwing you guys as much information as we can. It's giving you guys what is the best information for you to hear at that moment, so it's no fluff.
Yeah. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in to the Standard episode 1, talking about coaching as a career. As always, if you guys are interested in working with myself or Jerry, if you're a coach who wants to influence the highest standard of fitness and you want to create a better all right, Jerry, I'm a coach. Teach me about the standard of coach.
Check that
What?
out. Yeah, never see coaching like this before. No plan or anything.
Just sit there. What are
No
you
way.
doing? What are you doing? Um,
Sorry,
so
go to your
if you're-
outro. My
If
bad.
you're a coach who wants to influence the highest standard of coaching and you're looking for that next step, please reach out. I've launched the Standard, which is the new training program, online training program for coaches. And again, it's to influence the highest standard of coaching or highest standard in your own training so that it carries over into your business and coaching. And that's the whole idea behind it. So I want you to experience a great online experience, delivery, training program, all of that. So if you are interested in that, head over to www.bgperform.com/training. And if you're interested in joining the Coach Connect, my coaching education group, you can just reach out and DM me Coach Connect, and I'll give you more information on that. And if you want to reach Jerry, it's at Coach Jerry Hayes. And if you go on the website and you do fill out the intake form and you want to work with Jerry, you can just put Jerry at the bottom and I'll forward that information to Jerry. And if you want to work with me, just fill it out. Yeah, and it's at Coach Jerry Hayes on Instagram, and then it's at BGPerform_ on Instagram. And as always, I appreciate you guys for tuning in thus far. Let us know what your thoughts are. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, all of that. And we will see you guys next time. Peace.